Philalitheia. I am in my tent and I am very cold. Um, Today it's just a cold day. I went to sleep. Well, I don't know. Well, no, I know I didn't tell this story to anybody. I Taco Bell was super fucking cold last night, so I bundled up. I got in all my warm gear. I got all maximum warm, anticipating it would be cold outside because it was cold inside, and nope, it was cold enough in the store that I could see my breath, and it was like 50 in the 50s when I stepped outside, noticeably warmer, significantly warmer. So I got down to the tent and I stripped out of all of my warm layers because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to sleep. I would have been overheated and I've woken up vomiting at some point from overheating again. Um, and then, as you may or may not be able to see with the door open, it's snowing. It got very cold, and so I took the opportunity to spend the day in the tent, bundled up in my sleeping bags, frankly talking to Rach. And now I have to wonder whether my headphones have muted my microphone or not, and just hope they haven't. Hope that you've been able to hear me. But as I was sitting here, hey T-Rex, as I was sitting here, uh, I had to change the. Thank you, buddy. I had to change the batteries in my light again. Changed them last night. I had to change them again, and I had to change them today because I fell asleep with the light left on, and I was sitting here thinking to myself about how falling asleep with the light left on was probably a metaphor for how I was feeling at the time. I don't. If I had wanted to examine that, I might have. But then I immediately shifted when I thought that thought. My next thought was that it was the manufacturer's fault that the battery died and that the battery wasn't able to survive 24 hours or whatever. That it wasn't able to survive um, whatever arbitrary use I wanted in that moment. And then I reacted to that thought because that's the easy place to go from there. It's just to be upset at the manufacturer. And I had a thought that I think might be instructive, might be useful for other people. And so I've gone live early to think about that thought. The next thing I thought is that no, really, I instead of owing or instead of trying to cast or project, really, is what I would be doing, project some kind of arbitrary blame onto the manufacturer because the manufacturer is not present and can't defend themselves, and then I walk away emotionally scot-free. I thought, no, what I should be is grateful to the battery manufacturer that they provide a AAA battery service product that I can afford in bulk at $1.25, and that really what it says about me that I fell asleep with the light on last night is that I had abundance of battery operated power and that I could make that mistake. I could not differentiate the light in my tent from the budding light of dawn. And that really what I owe is gratitude to Dollar Tree and to their manufacturers of these AAA batteries, and in fact to Walmart for the inexpensive lamp, that I in fact owe these people gratitude, because without them I wouldn't have that abundance, I wouldn't have the light, and without them I wouldn't have the opportunity to make this relatively inexpensive mistake that doesn't need blame and doesn't need behavior change as a result. And so for me, I think it's more instructive to be honest with myself when I narrate, even in my own head when nobody's listening, what's happening, and that I act appropriately. I owe gratitude to the manufacturer of these batteries, to Walmart and to Dollar Tree, because without them, that mistake, if batteries were as expensive to me now in 2025 at 38 years old as they were to me in 1995 when I was 8 years old, batteries were gold. And the arbitrary expectation of usage life always left me disappointed when they died. Hello, Safe, and thank you, T-Rex. For me as a boy playing on the Game Boy or whatever battery-operated toy I would have been using at 8 years old, batteries were gold. They were expensive. They were a huge amount. Now, I was raised poor, so they were a huge amount of my kid money budget, of the budget that my parents were willing to spend on me at any one time. They were a huge portion of my buying power, to reference a conversation we had on the Discord the other day that I'm still not sure anybody listened to me as far as what I was trying to articulate. Huge. They were just a huge portion of my economy. So gold. Rare. So always disappointing. And so I don't need to be disappointed as an adult. I didn't need to be disappointed as a child when they died. I needed as a child to react the way I did as an adult. To ask, okay, well, what mistakes did I make in my time management that I wasn't prepared for them to die? That whatever bad thing happened. Batteries are an old technology, but they are also inexpensive. And so I find that habits and thought are habitual. So I could have just projected. I could have just cast the blame onto Dollar Tree or their manufacturers, and I could have said, well, if their batteries were better, that wouldn't have happened, and I wouldn't have to be doing this mildly inconvenient thing right now. But I find that if I let myself get off the hook of doing that, when it doesn't matter, I'm going to do it when it does. And someone that I love is going to be projected onto in that way. And I'm going to inappropriately narrate them when I owe them gratitude. And so if people ask me, well, why do people think, or like, why are you such a good friend? Or why do you think you're such a good friend? Or why do you think that the way that you do things is the right way to do them? And it's like, well, the proof in some ways is in the pudding, right? Follow through and making sure that I'm not thinking things that are unfair just because the person I'm thinking about isn't present to defend themselves means that I'm not likely, or yeah, it means that I'm not likely to do it when they are present to defend themselves. It's not about being quiet. It's about monitoring one's thoughts for accidental hurtful intent. Whew, I am cold, but I am good now. Bundled up. I'm gonna have my jacket on in just a moment. I'm gonna have these shirts. bell. Whew. I do not love being cold. It's not my favorite. But luckily, I can get active here when I start walking, and that will by itself get me warm. Or me warmer. Hello, Pink Cloud. I am getting ready to go to Taco Bell to get something to eat. And we'll play some 7 Days to Die once I've eaten. Probably 7 Days to Die. I don't have anything else burning a hole in my heart to play except for Kingdoms of Amalur. But I gotta make sure I do that when I'm in the right mood. My mood has to be right for Kingdoms of Amalur because it's a comedy series. I'm trying to have fun. I'm trying to show you the fun in playing the game as it's intended. That sometimes the way to love a game is to play it really well at its own terms. And a lot of YouTube streamers and a lot of people who watch Let's Plays have forgotten that, or maybe have never experienced the joy of watching somebody do something really well that they really like doing. They've never had the joy of experiencing watching that for the first time. So that's what Kingdoms of Amalur is about for me. I love that game. I love the world. I love the way it's presented. I love how thoughtful it was and how forward-thinking it was, and how deliberately thoughtful and forward-thinking it was. It's a lot of industry old hands, industry graybeards who wanted to do more than what the current corporate, well, the then current corporate environment would allow for them to do, especially because like the guy who directed the game, the guy who like directed everything, he came from Bethesda. He did Morrowind and Oblivion, and they ejector seated him when they went to Skyrim because Skyrim went beginner friendly, and Skyrim was the first game to really punish longtime players with simplicity. Accessibility is what we call it today. We call it accessibility today, where games are easy for first-time players, accessible, not easy, accessible, intuitive and accessible for first-time gamers to pick up and play and feel competent enough to play until the end. So Skyrim was the first RPG to really suffer from accessibility. So if you were alive at the time, or if you weren't, just tune into the channel. I talk about this a lot, and I'm going to keep talking about it because it's a major part of why I am the person that I am. But Skyrim was the first game to really lean in to accessibility. World of Warcraft at the time was leaning into accessibility, but they were doing it in a way that made sense. So Cataclysm and Skyrim were at the same time, and the Kingdoms of Amalur guys, they played EverQuest 2 and World of Warcraft, and they were disenfranchised by the cyclical nature of everything having to be dragons and the end of the world, because that's what World of Warcraft was doing, right? And so Skyrim had to ape it, and everybody else's game was that at the time. Dragon Age is exactly that, and dragons coming out of the bowels of the earth to ravage the world. And so these industry old hands, many of whom had got fired because they were trying to go the opposite direction. They were trying to return to 1990s, especially RPG complexity, because they felt like the generation of gamers who joined with the Xbox had by the Xbox 360 developed enough as human beings to be able to engage with and enjoy the complexity of a true RPG system. And Bethesda knew correctly that there are, no matter what generation of games, no matter what generation you're in with your hardware, there will always be a first-time player. And so your game needs to be accessible if it's going to be your flagship game. They're totally right about that. They were totally right. But that's also why they can't make a sequel to Skyrim, because it has to remain at the exact same level of complexity and accessibility, because the complexity v accessibility argument is still going on. So Dark Souls, for example, extremely accessible game. So accessible that the way they made the game difficult was locking you into animations, and they call that choice complexity. Locking you into your choices, and they call that a kind of choice complexity, but that's an accessible kind of complexity that everybody can understand. I press this button and I wait for the animation to play. Cancels are for people who change their minds. Changing your minds can get you killed. I get it. But Kingdoms of Amalur pushed back on that. The 2010s were also when it was gauche to talk about race, to talk about racism. And the early 2010s are when the liberal types started looking to video games instead of music. And they started saying, well, the way women and civilization are represented here are done so from the assumption that only white, able-bodied, muscular, athletic types or K-pop types have any real impact on reality. And then World of Warcraft blew up because it's a war. It's a race war. Literally. There are however many races there are now, but I think there were 8v8, maybe 6v6, something like that in the old days. But it was a race war. You knew who your sentient enemies were because their names were in red. So you knew who liked the thing that you liked for entirely different reasons than you like it. Like, I play Alliance, and I don't get along with Horde players because they like the game for entirely different reasons. And Blizzard was genius for that. And then all of the single-player RPGs that came out were trying to ape the success of the race war. Because I don't know if you remember the early 2010s. I don't know if you remember 2008 very well. But 2008 very well could have ended in race riots if the black community had been paying attention, or if black poverty had actually been affected. The only thing that really happened is that... Sorry about that. I let my phone die. I do that a lot. I can absolutely understand not waiting the 15 minutes or whatever for me to come back. Yeah. That tooth chipped again. Thank you. I wish I didn't do that. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna go get something to eat, which means I really shouldn't have done this live. But I just wanted to talk about being grateful for modernity in the world that we've got. And then I'm gonna eat. And then 7 days to die. My hands and feet are very cold. Okay. Anyway, thank you guys for watching the first 15 minutes. Be well.